Welcome everyone. Let's get started for this special council meeting. My name is Karen Redman. I'm the Mayor of the town of Gawler. I'd like to acknowledge the land that we meet on tonight is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. So first of all, we have one apology, Councillor White. We have I'm pretty sure Councillor Samble is coming. So we'll leave him as an apology to start with, but everyone else is here. So welcome elected members, welcome staff, welcome invited guests in the community gallery, and also welcome to the people who are making deputations this evening. So are there any motions to grant leave of absence, councillors? Doesn't look like there are any, so that's good. So we've got Councillor White. We'll put Councillor Samble down as an apology as well, but I think he will be attending. I'm not sure where Brian is, but he should be here. I'm sure he will get here very shortly. So we have 4 deputations tonight. In order, there will be Michael Osborne from Future Urban. We have residents Adam Roberts, Laura Addy, and Justin Simmons, in that order. So first of all, I would ask Michael Osborne if you'd like to come to the microphone. Just turn it on, that big red button in the middle there, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Councillors, Michael Osborne from Future Urban. The town plan is acting for the proponent in relation to the Padula's Garden Centre. Just want to give a quick update in terms of the engagement process. At the outset, it's worth reminding that the Padula's Garden Centre was established more than 50 years ago. It's a long-standing non-residential use of the land. And the activities undertaken on that site are activities which are actually anticipated in an employment zone. Code amendment, in essence, seeks to formalise a non-residential zone to reflect the non-residential use of the land, but at the same time bring in modernised planning controls to guide future development. And the investigations that have informed the code amendment go to the core of that planning policy framework going forward. The proponent is nearing the end of the formal engagement process. The engagement period closes Sunday at 5 p.m, Sunday the 12th. The process that's been undertaken in relation to the code amendment is consistent with that's envisaged by the PDA Act, consistent with the Community Engagement Charter. It's a process that's been followed in accordance with the conditions set out by the Minister in relation to the proposal to initiate. And the process, including the engagement plan, was endorsed by the State Planning Commission. We're confident that the process to date has been effective as measured by the high levels of community awareness and interaction with our team. There has been numerous meetings, discussions, communications, and to date there's more than 100 submissions of various kinds that we've received and are in the process of distilling. I'm sure there'll be more to come between now and the end of that period. The process of reviewing those submissions have commenced, and it is likely that the proponent will be contemplating notable changes to the code amendment and the LMA, which correlates with that code amendment. Those matters will be raised with council moving forward, commencing with staff, and then obviously with this chamber moving forward. Council will therefore be able to consider the revised code amendment and a revised LMA with the benefit of our engagement report. That draft engagement report will articulate the process undertaken, the submissions that have been raised, and the measures that have been taken to respond to those submissions. Should council wish to provide further feedback following the Sunday the 12th, we are certainly here to be involved in that process. We will have to consult further with council in relation to the land management agreement as is one matter. So the conversation doesn't stop. We commit just through a normal process that we will take on board feedback and then incorporate that into the final engagement report that will be provided to the Minister in due course. So in summary, we look forward to working with council after the formal engagement process on the 12th. And again, we're entering this in our best endeavours to understand the issues, work through the issues, above all, report those issues in a thorough and ethically correct way. So there's high transparency for all stakeholders to be aware of. So in summary, we conclude our submission there and look forward to working with council moving forward.
Thank you, Michael. Adam, would you like to come forward? Thank you. Just turn it on. There you go.
Your Worship, councillors, thank you again for taking the time to listen to my deputation. For those of you who may have forgotten, I'm opposed to the proposed rezoning of the Buller site. I do understand that because this is a special meeting, letting us speak tonight is at the discretion of the Mayor. Allowing us to speak along with the councillors who showed their support at the community gathering on the weekend says to me that you are genuinely interested in listening to what we have to say and listening to our concerns. So thank you again. To be completely honest, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to say tonight when I requested this deputation. You had the opportunity to listen to us last week where we spoke about how the rezoning would affect us from our personal perspectives. At that point in time, most of us were still strangers. Personally, I feel like we couldn't have done a better job of getting ours and our wider community's message across, and I'm proud of the community for coming together in the way that we have during this stressful time. My wife, daughter and I are new to Evanston Park. My dad was born in Gawler, but I've lived out of the area for most of my life. When we moved back to South Australia, we knew we wanted to bring up our daughter in a community such as this. We actually bought a house just before the rezone proposal came to light. And as it turns out, the newest residents now live next door to the longest on Ames Drive. I know this because our new neighbour climbed his ladder to tell us over the fence. I also learned that my neighbour is a second owner of his house and that the road across the street shares his surname. This rezone proposal was happening when we bought it, or the Badula site was already zoned as employment, and we certainly wouldn't have bought here. It is fair to say that we've had some buyer's remorse and we have wondered if we have done the wrong thing. But seeing how this community has come together to oppose this rezone has confirmed to us that we have chosen the right community to raise our daughter in, and we want to stay. Sadly, I feel a part of this community will die if this rezone is to go ahead. This isn't just about there being a big, ugly, tall building behind a house or anyone being opposed to progress. This rezoning will generally reduce the quality of our life. And as you heard last week, the quality of life will be significantly worse for some members of the community. I'm not sure if you've taken time to read all the reports I mentioned last week. I don't blame you, they are overwhelming. The acoustic report I mentioned confirms the only way to meet the sound guidelines if this site was to be rezoned to employment is to have a 4.5 metre wall along the length of our rear property boundary. In fact, this 4.5 metre wall will likely run the entire length of Ames and then along Coleman Parade to Sheriff Street. This in itself will be a monumental eyesore and will also mean that during winter, there will be significant overshadowing for the majority of residents along Ames Drive. I don't think any backyards along Ames Drive will see any sun during winter. Traffic congestion will be an issue along with pedestrian safety. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Adelaide Road, let alone the local roads in the area, will not be able to handle the volume of traffic this rezone will generate from rat running and people trying to avoid the proposed set of lights. Ames Drive is definitely not designed to handle the volume of traffic that this rezone will cause. The amount of people that already use Ames Drive to do U-turns is a concern. Just to be clear, This amount of traffic generated and the requirement for the wall will remain the same regardless of building height or setback. Because of this, a watered down employment zone is not a solution. The only solution is for this to remain as general neighbourhood. As I'm sure a lot of people in this room have, I've learned a great deal throughout this process, some good, some bad. One of the better things I've learned is that Gawler Council had the foresight to develop Gawler Community Plan 2030. After reading it, it confirmed to me that this is the community that I want to live in: proud, unique, inclusive, and green. However, this rezone seems to go against most of its goals. Not only that, sadly, some of the goals detailed in it may no longer even be achievable should this rezoning go ahead. Especially given its location, Gawler will lose that uniqueness that makes it so special. I don't know the history of why there has been a lack of engagement and communication with the community about this rezone. That's a discussion for another day. I'm sure there are reasons. All I know is we are here now at a special council meeting with you showing us you are listening to what we have to say. What we have come here tonight is to ask you that as our council, you represent our voice as a community to the planning minister and tell him that not only have you listened to the community you represent, but this rezone is not right for Gawler and are opposed to this code amendment. I have no doubt that the wider Gawler community, that community my family and many others have welcomed to, will not only thank you for it, but will be far better for it. And I don't believe a nursery that's been there for 50 years that sells outdoor furniture is the same as a Bunnings. Thank you.
Laura, would you like to come up? Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you to the council for allowing me to speak tonight. Gawler is a historic centre for the North, and the residents are proud of its history and street appeal. Historic buildings line the main street, and currently you are greeted by the lovely trees which line the racecourse. The proposed code amendment for 550 to 554 Main North Road stands at odds with what Gawler represents and wishes to represent into the future. A commercial development at that site contravenes Gawler Council's own beautification plan, which seeks to improve the aesthetics of the township and mentions Main North Road specifically. The beautification plan explicitly mentions the following points: enhance the appearance of the township, particularly at key entries and strategic nodes, and 2, reinforce a recognisable and distinct township character. It is my opinion, and the opinion of many residents, including those who are gathered here tonight, that the proposed commercial development is directly at odds with the Town of Gawler beautification plan. There has been mentioned that the proposed development will not affect businesses currently in Gawler, and specifically those on Murray Street. It is my contention that this is not the case. Even if the shops positioned on the proposed site are not actively competing for business, the alteration of the traffic conditions, as well as the deliveries and trucks circulating to the new development, will impact existing businesses. It just makes sense that this development is situated elsewhere in Gawler. For example, on the periphery of where development is happening, not on the established main street where residents have purchased, thinking that they were located within a residential area. If the residents wanted to live next to an industrial estate, they would have purchased in Elizabeth. Gawler has a certain look and feel to it, and it is my belief that both are being undermined, minimising the difference between historical Gawler and the rest of the suburbs in the north. The most surprising thing to me about this proposed development is that there are still so many people in the community who don't know about it. I have spoken to many local residents very recently, and over half of them were completely unaware that there is a proposed code amendment. Interestingly, of everyone that I have spoken to, not a single person has said that they are in support of the change. There has been an obvious failing to consult with the community, and I acknowledge that with the changes to the submission laws, this is the obligation of the proponent. However, there is no reason that the council could not have informed residents through planned meetings and letter drops. The result, regardless of whose responsibility it is to inform the public, is that the local residents, the people who are going to have to live with this development should it proceed have been effectively shut out of the process. It feels as though the community has been abandoned, where all we wanted is a council to reflect public sentiment. I feel that it is greatly inappropriate for this kind of development application to get as far as it has without serious community consultation. Local council has the ability to proactively advocate for their community. Residents would have loved to have had a council-led, community-based meeting. Instead, there is a community consultation link listed on the council's website on the 21st of February, 2023, a mere 13 business days before the submission deadline. The council minutes from October state that, quote, "The council is working collaboratively with the proponent, yet who is working collaboratively with the community? Development within Gawler needs to be a two-way street. There must be ample opportunity for the residents to be heard, and in order for them to be heard, they must first know about the proposal." I will close with 2 quotes from the Gawler Council website. Gawler is a vibrant town, vibrant and active community that promotes its unique and historic heritage, and Gawler community remains steadfast in its desire to protect and reinforce its unique character. I urge council to consider those 2 quotes when making the decision. Thank you.
Justin. Thank you, Justin.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I want to begin by extending my gratitude once again for providing me with a second opportunity to speak to you. Your willingness to listen to the concerns of the community is deeply appreciated, and I thank you for showing the grace to allow several representatives of our neighbourhood to speak to this issue at such short notice. As an educator, I'm seeing and sensing a high-stakes 6-week assignment coming down to the last few days of intense pressure as that deadline looms. Last time I spoke about some personal reflections on how this development is likely to impact my family. You'll recall that my primary concern was the noise generated from the loading zones, coupled with the increased rat running that will be running through Common Parade. Today, I represent the perspectives from the broader community, and I understand that you've been provided with a letter from the Honourable Nick Champion, Minister for Planning, that states, for proponent-led code amendments, councils can and are encouraged to engage directly with their communities to assist in forming the council's view on a code amendment. It goes on to say, to assist in forming its view on a code amendment, a council can hold community meetings and hear the views of community members directly. With that in mind, the first action I would petition to council is that even with the limited time remaining on the consultation period, that you seek feedback from the community to inform your response. I don't believe that a few deputations delivered at 2 meetings is enough to convey the true gravity of the concerns from our neighbourhood. To my second point, one of the main concerns with a proponent-led code amendment is that it can create a power imbalance between the developer and the local community. Developers often have more resources and expertise in navigating the planning process, which can make it difficult for community members to effectively advocate for their interests. Indeed, 5 weeks ago, most of our community had very little awareness about any aspect of the code amendment process, and we've been forced to undertake a very quick crash course. In just the same way as learning a foreign language 5 weeks before travelling internationally doesn't adequately prepare you for overseas travel, we need a translation service. It's for this reason that we need to leverage off the expertise of the council to assist us in informing our own submissions. Thus, my second petition to council is that you support our community through the provision of technical expertise and advice on the process. To my third point, the Gawler 30+ document is described as our highest level strategic document. It's designed to guide the town's growth and development over the next decade. It was developed by this council in consultation with the community and forms the framework under which future decisions are made. It reflects the community's values and council's intent through a series of goals and objectives related to the town's social, economic, and environmental sustainability. The goals should underpin the merits of all decisions made by this council. Whilst I would love to unpack the conflict that exists between the code amendment and the strategic direction in detail, I appreciate that I have limited time. So I'd like to address one area to emphasise the inappropriateness of this location for large-scale commercial development. Goal 2.3.5 reads that we will seek to minimise traffic congestion through the town centre. Goal 2.1.2 states that we will provide clear strategic direction in response to transport and traffic management measures in new growth areas and ensure integration with existing areas. The traffic management report estimates that the hourly vehicle movements through the complex on the Saturday peak hour to be 975, necessitating an additional set of traffic lights. Given the expanding population of the town will predominantly be to the north and eastern side of the South Parra and Gawler River, access to the venue will require crossing those rivers. As locals familiar with the geography of the town, you would understand that this leaves a limited number of approaches from the north from which this can be done. Bedlam looks set to ensue. The obvious transition passes directly through Murray Street, where this additional traffic crosses the South Parra over a single lane bridge, which leads to two single lane roundabouts. A less obvious route will be to access it from the bypass road, which will see traffic pass through the residential areas of Evanston Gardens and through a school zone. A third option exists through Schomburg Drive, and here I fear that many will turn right onto Coleman Parade to access this complex from a left turn from Sheriff Street so that they can avoid the three sets of traffic lights that will exist between Potts Road and this centre. This code amendment cannot coexist with goal 2.3.5, and this is not the correct location for an employment zone. It does not integrate well with traffic conditions across the remainder of the town, and it's my view that the right place for this kind of development is to be located closer to the major transport hubs and integrated into the new areas. Thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I trust that you receive this in the spirit of community engagement.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So now we will have a period of discussion in the open forum. I'd like to say a few words. Council is a local government entity, and council, as part of legislation and also regulations, needs to be fair, contribute to open, transparent and informed decision making. I think it's really important that people have faith in local government entities, that they actually do the right thing. So also, the principal role of a council, amongst other things, is to act as informed and responsible decision makers in the interests of its community and also be representative. So I think that thank you for your deputations this evening. I know it's not easy to get up and talk in front of a formal meeting, and thank you for everyone for coming along. But we intend to be fair and responsible and informed. So on that note, I might hand over to Andrew Goodsell, who's Head of Planning at Council. David, what? Oh, you've got a conflict, have you? Oh, sorry. Can somebody turn that? Laura, would you be kind? Thank you very much. Yes, sorry, David, you've got a conflict?
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to get to conflicts of interest. Yes, for this item, I do have a family member that owns a property in the expanded consultation zone that Future Urban expanded. I'm going to deal with the matter by, it's a general conflict, stay in the room and vote in the best interests of the Gawler community.
Thank you. If you can fill out one of those sheets, David, that would be fantastic. Any other conflicts of interest? by the way? No, thank you. So Andrew, I'll hand over to you, and I think you've got some updates for people.
Thank you, through the mayor. I'll be brief because time is short. So a number of issues were raised during the submissions and strongly held views and often well researched by the sound of it. I can talk briefly on a few matters which might be of interest to the gallery. Issues that have been raised concern the closing of the submission process. As has been indicated by the first submitter tonight, that is the Sunday this week in terms of the formal process. However, it's fair to say, and it's been said on a number of occasions throughout the engagement that's occurred, plus all the briefings I provided, that our discussions on the merits or otherwise of the proposal, plus the technical aspects of the amendment, traffic, acoustics, tree issues, stormwater, and so on, they're all matters which are still being actively assessed. So there is a duty of care, if you like, for council to peer review and to critique the proposal that's been engaged upon. As of today, I can wave in front of you a tree report that I've got, which we'll look at in comparison to the tree report that was done by
Council
proponent.
commissioned that, council.
Council commissioned that.
Yeah.
We're doing the same thing when it comes to traffic modelling because it's a strongly held view that there are some interesting situations with regards to Sheriff Street Junction and general traffic management and whether that can be managed in an appropriate way. Stormwater has been a pre-existing issue. So these are things which we'll get solutions to, at least advice from our end as to where we should sit towards the end of March.
So we will put in quite a powerful and comprehensive submission after the close
That's correct.
of the 12th. So council will be putting in a submission, just so everybody's aware.
And finally, I guess I should say that I've got a timeline which I can go through now or later, probably it's for another day if you like. But what I would say is that the intention would be that we will get a copy of the submission and the assessment from Future Urban of all submissions received. So council can form a reasonable view based on the submissions received, how they've been responded to, whether that amends the proposal in a way which we think is appropriate or otherwise. Equally, it needs to look at the technical advice we've sought to, again, review what we think are relevant issues which may or may not have been addressed in the proponent's proposal. And that takes us to the end of March, which then goes through an LMA process and then ultimately probably a submission that needs to get tested with the community.
So that's a land management
Sorry, land management
agreement.
agreement.
Sorry, yeah,
Planners love-
initiated.
Planners love acronyms, I'm sorry. So we've talked about land management agreements before, and that's our infrastructure hat. We need to make sure that infrastructure delivered is appropriate on the ground and is responsive to the impacts as identified from the proposed development, if and when it occurs. So there's a number of steps we have to go through. We're still very much early days. We aren't informed yet in terms of our view. I will come back to you with a report when I am ready to do so, which will be later in the month. Thank you.
Later in the month, and what happens after that?
Well, after we've got the submissions from the proponent, which is the end of March, we're intending to go through the LMA with our lawyers, and we have our lawyers in the room tonight. And then we'll be coming back to council in April with a review of the merits of the code amendment in terms of whether the amendment has merit to proceed, and more specifically the LMA as well, and how that gets constructed. And that will go through an exhibition process, I predict, around the 1st of May for 3 weeks. And ultimately a special meeting, sorry about that, in May, which will then allow council to finalise its view and for the proponent to then go back to the minister. So the minister, Future Urban have been quite amenable to the fact that we need to inform ourselves and not to rush council through its process. And that is to be acknowledged. And there's a process, as I've outlined, which we need to follow.
So with our submission, what happens with our submission?
3-week advertising period, for comment period. And
So
the
that's a public consultation.
Correct.
period. Yeah.
And the question for council will be whether it wishes to have an open forum at the end of that process to allow anyone to clarify anything that's come out of that process, the feedback on our submission, if you like.
Okay, so I hope that clarifies some of your points, Laura. Yeah, there'll be a process going forward, which we will highlight publicly. So, Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mayor, just to confirm here, so when we form our submission, it'll come to a collective opinion on whether or not we agree with the merits of a
Yes.
code
Yes.
amendment, a change of a rezone. That will sit alone as a differing opinion, and then the LMA, the Land Management Agreement, will also sit secondary to that if a development was to occur. And they will both.
So
I
they'll,
can see a lot of
they'll be
voting.
presented together, Andrew, they'll be presented together. Whether we separate them out, whether we put them together is up to us.
And at that time, we'll be able to make our position clear as the elected body
Yes.
to our community.
Yes, and it goes back to what I mentioned before, via the Local Government Act, complying with legislation, being informed and having every bit of information that we need to make an informed decision, which then feeds into the submission, which, as I said, will be powerful and comprehensive. So, thank you. Thank you, Andrew, for that update. Much appreciated. And I'm sure elected members are appreciative of that. Councillor Davies.
Yeah, so when this comes back for its final report, I'm just clarifying that, will this be a public item? Would we be going into confidence for it, or would it be a public item that the community can attend?
My understanding it would be public. It will be public, yes. 26th of, what day is the week is that? Wednesday. It's a Wednesday. That's right. That's right. We moved it. Yep. Yeah. Councillor Hennessy.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for my clarification, so it comes to the 26th of April, which is council meeting. We then go out for 3 weeks of public consultation. And then it's be a special meeting in May where we have another report that will encapture the public consultation. And then part of that might be that there'd be an open forum at the special meeting in May. Is that correct?
Well, it may not be part of a special meeting. It might be a separate forum. Yeah. We haven't quite worked that out yet, but we will work that out. Councillor Solomon.
So I'm just confirming, just to double check that, so this forms part of, that's the submission to Future Urban.
Yes.
And the proponent, and that forms what they will take to the minister.
Yes.
For the minister's decision.
That's correct.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. So we have time to get our all our information so that we, as a council entity, as a local government entity, we're not individuals sitting around a table, we're a body corporate, and we are a local government entity. It will enable us to make an informed decision, whatever that decision might be. Okay, so I'll come back to our agenda. I've asked about declarations of interest. So we're moving now to confidential reports. And there is a recommendation to discuss our legal advice in confidence. Are you happy to move that way, Councillor Davies? Do you want to explain why we're going into confidence, please?
Yeah, look, I mean, preferably, I'd like if we could have the whole community involved throughout the process, but this is when it comes to legal advice, if we want unfiltered legal advice, we need to be able to have it in private. So that's why I'm moving for this to be in confidence.
Councillor Ballalonga, you're seconding, you had your hand up. Well, I'm going to ask for a seconder. Do I have a seconder, Councillor Hennessy? Do you wish to speak at all? No. Now I'll go to you, Councillor Ballalonga.
No, I don't second it, because I don't believe we should be in confidence at all.
Okay.
I think the public should know what we were talking about. There's nothing illegal or illegality, is there, that we don't know?
Thank you, Councillor Ballalonga. Thank you. If there's no further, Councillor Solomon.
I did just want to make mention that I won't be voting to go into confidence. I don't believe that. I think we've discussed the legal advice, it's fairly clear. I don't want to rehash that, and I think what we heard in some of the deputations was quite mature in the sense that it mentioned not rehashing some of the what has gone wrong here. And I think that it's really time that we moved forward and looked at and did the right thing and made sure that we're doing the right thing. And I think we have that legal advice and it's sufficient at the moment.
Thank you. If you can. Councillor Koch.
Look, I'll be supporting that we go into confidence. We had a council meeting where we talked about these issues in confidence and we basically ran out of time. And this is an opportunity where we can actually go back and ask those questions, which councils have actually said that they had questions to ask of the lawyers. So this is the time to go into confidence and actually ask those questions, because there could be questions there that might be compromising to somebody or something. So we have to be very, very careful. We have to be transparent, but we have to be fair to everybody. And I think it's very important that we go into confidence on this item. Thank you.
So Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, look, I completely agree, Councillor Koch, that there was conversation around sort of airing out some ambiguity. That was before I realised what the staff have now publicly said and the understanding of the process. I now take the position, like Councillor Solomon, that the legal advice is the legal advice, and the questions I have now been answered. Because the ambiguity around us being able to make a submission and having to make a submission between the 12th, before the 12th, was a massive problem for me personally and the people I represent. Now we understand the process a bit further. We have answered those questions. And I have no further questions in this space.
But other people might. And I think it's not just about you, Deputy Mayor, but it's about a collective and, you know, what people wish to do. So let's see where this goes. Did you have your hand up, Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, I was just going to say what you just actually said, Mayor. I do think we actually have paid for our legal advice people to be here because councillors actually did have questions, and some of those councillors have said yes, then they're not going to vote against it. We've paid for these legal people to turn up tonight. I think it's justified that we actually ask these questions, and in some ways I apologise to the audience, but this is how Gawler Council wants to operate carefully. We don't want to be seen as biased in this process. We want this process to be fair and across the board, but we have to do it properly. And this is the proper way to go through the process. So I'll be voting for going into confidence.
Thank you. Councillor Davies, you can wrap up the debate. Thank you.
Yeah, look, I definitely understand the issues. I just want to, I guess, clarify that what we're going into confidence for is not to secretly make a final decision or anything like that. This is specifically, as it says on the item, this is an item just for asking questions about legal advice. I wouldn't support, you know, going into confidence to make a decision on this. But, you know, the way that legal advice works is that you get the best legal advice when they're allowed to speak freely. So that's why I'm supporting the motion.
So the debate is closed. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against? Sorry? It is lost, so we won't be going into confidence. So, yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. This is a formal meeting, so I appreciate if you not clap constantly, but I appreciate you do like to, you do want to clap. So our legal advisors, Michael, how do we wish to proceed?
In my view, Mayor, based on what we've heard this evening, where there's now been a full and clear explanation about the process, there's been confirmation that the council is not bound by the same public consultation deadline of the 12th.
That's
Elected
right.
members appear to me, from what the contributions I've heard, to be comfortable that the decision-making process from here will meet the requirements of the Local Government Act. It will be representative, informed and responsible. That will be as a result of the reports that the administration have commissioned and are going to go through. That will also be as a result of Future Urban, providing you with a précis of the submissions they've received, all of which will inform a provisional council response, a submission. That submission, as I understand it, will go to public consultation. So the community will be involved through open meetings, through the ability to make submissions. And then ultimately, after taking into account the public feedback, there will then be the final submission to Future Urban. And Future Urban, of course, will wrap all of that up and give a report to the minister. So I too believe that those concerns, which were originally indicated by members, are probably now totally overcome, unless I'm wrong. If we are wrong, I'm happy to answer any questions. But quite simply, what we have now is a clear process which involves the community,
That's right.
where the proposed submission will be subject to community consultation. And quite simply, we have a longer date as the council, because the message from the minister was there were to be two lots of consultation. Consultation with the community, and secondly, consultation with the council. The community consultation closes off on the 12th. The council's consultation doesn't close off until a much later date, which allows you to undertake the engagement that you just this evening indicated you would. So I don't believe that there is any need at this point in time to go down the rabbit hole of questions about why there was a disallowance of motion last time, which I think now is for very clear and good reason, and that's why that decision was made.
Thank you. So if there's, have you got a question?
Just if I could move to thank our lawyers for being present tonight. And
Oh, I don't think do we really need, do you want to be thanked? Do you want a resolution of council?
that's,
Do
well,
you want resolution?
just a nice thank you for coming. No longer needed.
I think that's okay. I think that's very gracious of you, Deputy Mayor, and I'm sure that the Kelledy Jones lawyers are more than happy with yes, that they very much appreciate that gesture. But thank you very much. Look, if there's no further questions, Right. So, Michael, another question. There's a previous order on this legal advice that stands. We haven't gone into confidence, so that previous confidentiality order still stands. If you can provide some clarity around that, because the CEO's just asked the question, if that can be. Thank you.
Yes, Mayor. The section 91(7) order that was previously made continues to stand in accordance with its terms.
Yes.
The issue tonight is the legal advice hasn't been tabled.
No.
There hasn't been any verbal advice proffered, so everything's as it should be.
So I think that, thank you very much for that clarification. So we have a standing order over those documents. So we haven't tabled anything at this stage. So I'm actually going to close the meeting. If there is further questions for, did you want a further clarity or further question? I think that's fine. I think that's okay. I think if there's any further questions, please forward them to the CEO around any clarity questions that you may have, and that we can take that offline through the CEO and he can respond accordingly. So I'm going to close the meeting now at 7:15. Thank you everyone for coming. I hope that provides a little bit more clarity on our processes, on our being fair, representative and responsible and informed. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're more than welcome to stay for the budget meeting if you want.